Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining us now, New York Times reporter.
That's why I was tapping my pen.
Yeah, I saw that tapping. That tapping makes me nervous.
Yeah.
New York Times reporter and MSNBC national
nervous.
security analyst Michael Schmidt. He's the author of Donald Trump v. the United States Inside the Struggle to Stop a President. And his latest piece for NBC Think is an excerpt from his book entitled Comey's October Surprise Shook America 4 years ago today. His wife tried to stop it.
Okay.
She did?
Okay, so,
tell us what happened.
So, Michael, this is not a question that Willie and I usually ask on this show. But why didn't he listen to his wife? Come on, man.
So, the night before the decision, Jim Comey comes home from work and he's in the kitchen and he says, "You're never going to believe what I have to do." And Comey's wife immediately recognized the problems with the decision. She could see that this was going to be bad for her husband, and she could see, more importantly, that it was going to be bad for Hillary Clinton. And she argued with her husband, telling him, saying, "This is too close to the election. How can you do this?" And she's pushing back on him and forcing him to try and explain why he believes he needs to do this. And Comey, in a very matter-of-fact way, lays out what he says are two awful options, the speak or conceal. And she's aghast at what she's hearing. She can understand her husband's logic and why he's deciding to do that, and she knows not to invoke Hillary Clinton's name as a way of trying to say, look, you're going to, devastate her candidacy and potentially hurt Donald Trump. But it's this moment. They're peering into the future of American history in a way that no one else in the country knew what was going on. And they're sitting at their kitchen table discussing this, and she's really trying to stress test this decision. And it gets there's a little bit of friction in the room, and he gets a little bit of frustrated with her because he doesn't think that he's really helping her as he confronts what he knows will be one of the biggest decision of his career.
Yeah, Claire McCaskill. We can certainly sympathize with Jim Comey saying, my God, what if I have this information and I don't release it and then it comes out after the election? Then I completely look like I was in the tank for Hillary and was covering up information that could be detrimental not only to her campaign, but to her legal standing. At the same time, I thought the way he released it was so ham-fisted. There had to be a better way to release something like this with 10 days left in the campaign.
Comey delivered the presidency to Donald Trump. And it is ironic that Trump has spent almost 4 years trying to pretend that somehow the FBI and the Department of Justice and the Obama administration was trying to keep him from being president. It is so stupid Comey delivered the presidency. And by the way, Comey, he's got to go to his grave knowing he elected Donald Trump. And I think he does know he elected Donald Trump. But the other thing is, when you look at the time period, Michael, when you look at the time period that they had this laptop, it went like 30 days. They could have dug in and gotten all the information. And the letter he could have given out 2 weeks before the election could have been the letter that he, in fact, gave out right before the election that cleared her. But instead, they sit on it. I mean, you talk about malpractice. You talk about a problem. That is what this country had happened to it in the election. It wasn't that they were trying to hurt Donald Trump. It was their incompetence elected Donald Trump.
The thing that I think that if Comey were to address this, and he's spoken a fair amount about this, is basically when the decision is presented to him, he believes that this process of having to go back and look at the emails is going to go on for many weeks. It'll be something that maybe even take months to do. And I think that if Comey had known that they were going to be able to go through these emails as quickly as they did, because by the Sunday before the election, they had figured out that there was nothing there, I'm not sure he would have done what he did. But what happens is that they make the announcement, and within a matter of days, by the next week, by the Sunday before the election, they have determined that there is nothing here. There's nothing that changes anything. And they put this second statement out. Just, I believe, on the Sunday before the election, they put this statement out that basically says we haven't found anything. So it looks like to the public that this was an exercise. There was like, well, why did this happen? And obviously there are reasons that were happening, and there's thousands of pages of Justice Department documents that come out afterwards that explain it. But that was the FBI story at the time. And it certainly did cast these questions over Clinton that she had largely put behind her as folks were going to the election. And I think that, for Comey, the ironic thing of the entire thing is that in Donald Trump, Donald Trump does as much damage to the FBI as would have been done had the FBI been accused of covering up for Hillary Clinton. And I think what Comey would say, well, I had two really bad choices in front of me.
It is Wednesday, the 28th of October of 2020. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Well, I don't know. Maybe we could be done with the Catholic handmaids. That would be nice. Well, we're going to be stuck with her for a long time, apparently, unless we're able to impeach. I don't know if we can impeach her, but somebody better go after Kavanaugh. I'd like to see Thomas under the in the barrel. Yeah, he should be in the barrel now too. Most corrupt SCOTUS on the SCOTUS right now that we can tell, because I think Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and now Amy. Whew. Okay, well, I guess we won't be going to the Supreme Court for any protection of voting rights. Not after that sloppy opinion that Kavanaugh wrote. 5 glaring mistakes. And this guy is a Supreme Court justice? It's almost like they elevated someone not qualified. And why would they do that? Because he was a Brooks Brother rioter. Oh, you maintain that he only handled the law part. He was there screaming too. And we got John Roberts. He's supposed to be now the swing vote. He was a Brooks Brother rioter also. Guess who else was involved? She wasn't wearing a Brooks Brothers suit, but she was with the Brooks Brother rioters, and that would be, yes, Amy. Is it a reward? Could be. They have a farm team. Work them up through the ranks. We just have qualified jurists who work hard at being jurists instead of being, well, prepped to destroy America? Yeah, we actually have a Federalist Society judge making decisions in Michigan that we're going to attend to today in the curated part of the show. Funny how they seem to always be Federalist Society judges that make these really bizarre rulings that have nothing to do with American liberty and everything to do with maintaining an authoritarian with a really bad makeup job. So the metaphors are flying fast and furious this morning after Trump left thousands of elderly maggots stranded in the middle of the freezing night in Omaha, out on a airport tarmac. Oh, they forgot to get the buses and shuttles to them. Oops. Well, you know, like I said, the metaphors are flying fast and furious. Will those people continue to vote for him? Well, they probably already have, and if they haven't, they probably will say, I want to vote for him before I die, because it's a cult. Which reminds me, I hate it when people say the Democratic Party is a cult. My God. They say that we're driven by the cult of personality. The cult of personality is causing us to vote for these really bad Democrats. What? I know what they're saying. They're not getting their way on every single part of the purity scale. So therefore, burn it all down. So I keep hearing that from another side of the political spectrum. It happens to be on my right. Burn it all down. And here the supposed silent majority law and order types back in the day were so worried the hippies were going to do this, little knowing that the ones who were supposedly the hippies were not hippies at all. And now they're burning it down. Warned you. It wouldn't be us. It wasn't us shooting the redneck as we hippies walked by. No, was the redneck shooting us hippies? Or would it be we hippies? Okay. I keep reading these stories about millions of Americans are getting ready for civil war. They're willing to kill their neighbors. I have a feeling it's not really a whole lot of Democratic Party voters that, want to kill their neighbors. I always hate that. You know, if we take precautions to keep from being killed, we're just as bad. And when I say precautions, I don't mean threatening people with guns. But I don't know. Do I need to take a petition of the Trump flag flying neighbors in the neighborhood and have them sign a release that says they won't kill us after the election? They won't sign it because they've already made a promise, and they can't break that promise. And what is that promise? You know exactly what I mean. It's a cult. How can we be a cult? I don't get it. With all the internecine fighting? I know cults have internecine fighting all the time, but let's be clear. I don't think very many people are willing to go and catch hypothermia in the middle of the freezing night in Omaha. Now, I'm a little confused. These people come from Omaha, right? They've lived there before. They know what the freezing nights are like. Oh, I know. They thought there would be buses. The buses that took them there have to be there to take them back. The Trump campaign paid for buses to get them there, but did not reserve and pay the buses to take them back. The people are going to vote for them anyway. Okay. They've made their bed. So, once again, I mean, I understand the confusion. These elderly people in Omaha voting for Trump actually thought he was going to take care of them. And when he didn't, you know who they're going to blame. Yeah, it will not be Donald Trump or anybody in his campaign. It'll be Antifa. They'll blame Antifa. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, did you know? Well, you know now, Jim Comey's wife tried to stop his October surprise, but apparently she was unsuccessful, apparently. Men, you got to listen to your wives more. I'll give you an example. I was with some buddies who were bachelors, and we were rehabbing homes, getting homes and getting them ready for sale. I guess you'd call that flipping. But we were contractor types, and we would go in and actually reconfigure floor plans and do what needed to be done, and maybe some things that, well, we wanted to do. And one of those weird things is that my friends, for some reason, wanted to take closets out of rooms to make the rooms bigger. And, you know, the idea being is that anybody who buys this house will just get some armoires. Now, of course, how property, living space is appraised for the real estate market is that a room is considered a living space when it has a closet. So I had to convince them because I had been married. In fact, I was married at the time. And my wife at the time said, you know, it's women who buy the houses. You know, when married couples go in, it's the wife who really has the last say. And women want closets. And in fact, instead of taking out that small closet you have there, you should make bigger closets. So that house sat for a long time. Way past the real estate sales contract, even had to sign a few more contracts to get that thing moved. And then all the next houses put in bigger closets. Yeah, those moved rather quickly. In fact, put them on the market, sold the next day. Isn't that weird? Men, listen to your wives. You'll go a lot further, and you might have a much more comfortable life because of it. Really. On the rest of the menu, with an anemic 37.4% support among active military, it's no wonder Trump doesn't want armed services ballots from overseas counted. Think of that. We're talking only 37.4% support among active military, not retired. You would expect it from retired. Well, actually, there are many retired who apparently like the guy. But we're talking about active military personnel protecting America's interests overseas. And Trump does not want their votes counted. I wonder why. Now, I should mention, we'll get into it in the article, but support for Biden among active military personnel? Yeah, almost 42%. After white nationalists were busted plotting to assassinate Michigan Governor Whitmer, a Federalist Society judge ruled militias can carry loaded weapons in the state's polling sites. That goes without comment. And a Texas council outlawed social worker bias against clients on the basis of their disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Well, something good is happening out of Texas. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Facebook reported the same Iranian hackers behind the recent U.S. election disinformation campaign targeted the Middle East last year. And a Nigerian judge threw out the case of 47 men charged under the country's new anti-homosexual law. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of that chat room link that is near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio if you can afford an espresso type coffee drink. Really, just an espresso type coffee drink, if you could afford that in these perilous times, and send those funds our way. We stretch those dollars, of course, and then we pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue Resistance Radio as the founders originally intended. And that was long before Amy was a gleam in the Federalist Society's eye. Long before that. And we do thank you for your generosity, to those of you who have been so generous over all these many years. And we give a big shout out and thanks to those of you considering so, because, to be honest, we need it. But thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. That is so simple. And Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of at Justice Putnam because I have to. It's me. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. I do. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay, I'll get us on Amazon. I will, I promise. I still am dealing with transferring the medications that are supposed to come like clockwork in the mail to a new company now, since, well, that's what happens when you're taking care of your elderly mom. And Trump is running the show, and everything's in flux. The economy is tanking, and it's showing up on people who are on a fixed income and how they can get their medication. Wow. All right. But I'll get us on Amazon probably next week. All right. We better dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Oh, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, by the way. I know, it's just a lovely egg dish with an equally lovely and velvety hollandaise sauce. Should try it. Josh Israel of the American Independent brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump's latest attack on voting could undermine the right of many active duty military members to have their votes counted in the 2020 elections, because Trump and apparently Kavanaugh, lying Kavanaugh, they say that because, hey, look, TV's been calling the elections on election night for as long as we can remember. Yeah, well, you know what? America's a lot older than what you can remember. On Tuesday, which happened to be yesterday, Trump demanded that the election be decided on November 3rd, rather than waiting for all ballots to be received and counted. He falsely suggested that it is illegal to count any ballots received in the days following the election, but that's just not true. Jeez. It would be very, very proper and very nice if a winner were declared on November 3rd, he told reporters, instead of counting ballots for 2 weeks, which is totally inappropriate, and I don't believe that's by our laws. I don't believe that. He doesn't know anything about America and has never cared. While it's unclear whether Trump is familiar with the law, I think it's clear that he's not. Many states allow ballots postmarked by Election Day, but received later to be counted, especially when those ballots come from military and overseas voters. Indeed, Trump's own new home state of Florida has long required that ballots sent by that ground be counted, even if they have not arrived by Election Day. An overseas voter has 10 extra days from Election Day to mail back a vote-by-mail ballot. This 10-day extension only applies in presidential preference primary elections, general elections and special elections, and special primary elections by operation of Section 100.191, FS. And that's the state's Division of Elections website notes. The overseas voters' vote by mail ballot must be postmarked or dated by Election Day and received within 10 days of the election in order to be counted, provided the ballot is otherwise proper, and that's part of the election code in Florida. Now, this is not the first time Trump has undermined members of the U.S. Armed Services. He took billions of dollars appropriated by Congress for military families and repurposed it to pay for that stupid vanity wall, and he hasn't even done anything with it. 10 miles of refurbishing a fence that was already there, and he calls that the wall? Where'd the money go? He refused to even ask Putin about intelligence, showing that the Russian president had put bounties on the heads of U.S. troops in Afghanistan. He called Americans who died while serving losers and suckers, and he mocked U.S. prisoners of war like the late Senator John McCain, saying, "I like people that were captured." Polling suggests there might be a good reason for Trump not wanting to count those military ballots. A military time survey in August, which actually we reported here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, that survey of active duty service members in August found that 41.3% preferred Joe compared to just 37.4% support for Trump. Ed White of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A judge on yesterday, blocked a ban on the open display of guns near Michigan polling places on Election Day, agreeing with critics who said a Democratic Secretary of State failed to follow state law with her sudden order. Gun rights groups accused Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson of exceeding her authority in banning people from openly carrying guns within 100 feet of voting sites. She acted after authorities, meaning the FBI, recently busted up a plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer and behead her. But Benson failed to go through a formal rule-making process required under state law, Justice Christopher Murray said. Federalist Society, Christopher Murphy, I might add. Compliance is no mere procedural nicety, Murray said. Instead, our appellate courts have repeatedly emphasized the importance of the democratic principles embodied in the law, which requires notice and an opportunity to be heard on the subject under consideration. Earlier in the day, Assistant General Heather Meingast said lawmakers have given secretaries of state discretion to set certain election rules, including safety. Separately, armed critics upset with the governor's orders about controlling the coronavirus have rallied at the Capitol. In fact, they've taken over the Capitol and run out legislators while armed. So I guess that's the precedent that's being set. Chris, there are dozens. We've had numerous complaints, Meingast told the judge. There are voters who are afraid. There are election workers who are afraid to go to work on Election Day. Murray said that, well, voter intimidation already is illegal, so if they're using a gun, we'll just take them to court later after they've sprayed the place and killed a bunch of people. I mean, you'll still have your day in court. You'll be dead, That's the stupid libertarian Federalist Society view. They always say, don't worry, you can just take someone to court after the crime has been committed. How about prevention of the crime? Some states and groups are preparing for tension at polling places. In Ohio, the League of Women Voters has been recruiting peacekeeper teams of clergy and social workers to ease stress at the polls. At least 125 people have signed up. Now, Murray hears lawsuits against the state of Michigan as a judge on the Court of Claims. He is also chief judge on the state appeals court and is running for re-election to that court. Worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A Texas council rescinded action that would have allowed social workers to turn away clients on the basis of their disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. By a unanimous vote, the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council restored protections of those clients who had been stripped from state social workers' code of conduct during a joint meeting on October 12th with the Texas State Board of Social Work Examiners. The previous vote, which came at Greg Abbott's direction, the weird governor there, drew a backlash from social worker and civil rights advocacy groups. In a statement, the Texas chapter of the National Association of Social Workers applauded Tuesday's vote yesterday, saying it was the right decision and would not have happened without the collective strength and unity of voices from social workers across the state and nation, countless advocacy groups, federal and state legislators, and all others voicing their grave concern against the changes. State Senator Jose Menendez, a San Antonio Democrat, also praised their decision. It is courageous to do the right thing when someone in power advised you otherwise, he said in a statement. He added that he appreciated the vote to stand on the right side of history. Messages to the council spokeswoman and Abbott's office were not immediately returned, and they never are from Abbott's office, are they? Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You were listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, a sweet mystery. Enola Holmes, the new movie based on the popular young adult series by Nancy Jenkins, is a retelling of the classic Sherlock Holmes series. Here, the spotlight isn't on the famous sleuth, but on his much younger sister Enola, played by Stranger Things' Millie Bobby Brown. Raised primarily by her mother Eudora in the family's country home, Enola is way ahead of her time, which is the late 19th century, but Eudora has schooled her daughter in science, math, and more importantly, in the belief that society's rules should not dictate her lot in life. On Enola's 16th birthday, Eudora disappears, leaving behind a series of clues as to what might have happened to her. Enola's older brothers are of little use and seem more eager to send her off to a strict boarding school to learn the ways of society ladies than they are in locating their mother, so the job is left to Enola. Along the way, she meets a rebellious aristocratic boy and a host of other characters, including a women's rights group who seem to know her mother. While the film clocks in at over 2 hours, there are lots of plot lines to tie up, all while laying the groundwork for a possible sequel. Brown shows she's a versatile actress, while Helena Bonham Carter does the job in her role as Eudora, making the character's eccentricities seem real and not forced or done for laughs. While Henry Cavill and Sam Claflin are respectable in their respective roles as Sherlock and Mycroft, it's the women who lead this one. Women challenging institutionalized sexism is a message that will resonate with women and girls today, even amidst the wonderful Victorian set design. For those looking for a good one to watch with daughters or nieces, etc., Enola Holmes won't disappoint. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky. Election Day is November 3rd. In this week before the election, we're rolling out a special series of short podcasts in which we'll look at how the election could affect some major areas of science. To set up what you'll hear the rest of the week, I spoke to Scientific American's editor-in-chief, Laura Helmuth.
There's a lot to talk about. The election is almost upon us. People are voting already. And some of the biggest issues that will be decided by this election have to do with science and health and the environment and our future energy structure and climate change. And it's an urgent time to talk about these subjects.
And we're not endorsing a candidate in this case. We are just laying out the terms of what the stakes are for these scientific areas in this election.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to vote for one candidate or for some people the other. But really, if you're interested in scientific subjects, there will be a lot of different directions the country will go in, one direction or the other, depending on this election. And we just want to, lay out what the stakes are.
And what do we say to the inevitable audience member who doesn't want to hear about politics when they come to a science venue?
Yeah, I mean, that is a good question. And, I think all of us, right now, especially when there's so much politics in the air, it's really refreshing to come somewhere and to think about black holes or the age of the universe or how dinosaurs evolved. And, we will continue to be talking about those things. If politics settles down, we'll be doing probably more of those than we have in the past few years. But at this moment, the future of the research enterprise is really on the line. And we just think it's important for people to know how dramatically one administration or another can influence, the way that scientific collaboration happens, the way science is communicated, what the priorities are for what should be studied and how.
For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1861. That was the day that the Pony Express made its last run and passed into legend. The mail delivery service had lasted only a year and a half, until it folded under competition from the newly completed transcontinental telegraph. The idea for a faster Western mail delivery service came from the owners of the wagon freight company, Russell, Majors, and Waddell. At the time, the railroad terminated in St. Joseph, Missouri. The goal of the Pony Express route was to cover the 2,000-mile route from St. Joe to San Francisco in 10 days, or half the time of competitors. Riders would travel between one station and another on horseback, switching horses as they went. For this arduous job, the company targeted young men, sometimes in their teens. The goal was to hire small men to keep the weight low for the horses. The riders had to sign a pledge not to drink, gamble, fight, or swear. To back up the clean living, they were each issued a Bible. Riders were paid a minimum of $50 per month in addition to room and board. The riders faced many hazards from bad weather to thieves. They often traveled across lands in dispute between the U.S. government and Native Americans, adding to the potential danger. The fastest express delivery ever was Lincoln's inaugural address, which made it to California in under 8 days. Perhaps the most famous person who claimed to be a Pony Express rider was Buffalo Bill Cody, although it's unlikely he ever carried the mail. He incorporated the Pony Express into his Wild West show, turning the mail service into the stuff of legend.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Protesters took to the streets of Philadelphia for a second night after the fatal police shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. The 27-year-old black man was killed Monday during a confrontation with police in West Philadelphia. His family said he suffered from bipolar disorder and was in crisis at the time. They said they had called for an ambulance to get him some help with a mental health crisis, not for police intervention. City officials acknowledge the shooting raises questions and says they're investigating it. The case draws fresh attention to the fatal use of force by police after months of protests over how officers treat black people. With 6 days left of voting in the 2020 presidential election, more than 70 million Americans have already cast their ballots. That's more than half the total turnout of the 2016 election, with still a week to go. The record-breaking pace could lead to the highest voter turnout in percentage terms in more than a century. That said, if you haven't yet mailed in your ballot, don't. CNN reporting on Tuesday that D.C. District Court Judge Emmett Sullivan ordered that the Postal Service must make sure ballots are delivered quickly. 1 week out from Election Day, the judge told the Postal Service to inform its employees that late delivery trips are allowed and the delivery of ballots by state elections deadlines is important. The order is some of the most aggressive oversight the Postal Service has faced yet in its handling of election mail. The bottom line is that if you haven't yet mailed in your ballot, you need to hand deliver it either to your local election supervisor's office or find an official drop box. Do not trust the U.S. Postal Service for now. Regardless of where you are in the states, go to iwillvote.com to find out the best way to return your ballot. Meanwhile, the directives coming from the president himself are not nearly as well thought out. At a rally in Lansing, Michigan on Tuesday, after lie bragging that he did great with women in the 2016 election, Donald Trump actually said,
"And you know what else? I'm also getting your husbands. They want to get back to work, right? They want to get back to work. We're getting your husbands back to work, and everybody wants it. And the cure can never be worse than the problem itself."
Yeah, that's the way to win over women. Oh, my God. Donald Trump has been ignoring the experts' advice and holding multiple rallies each day. On Tuesday night, he ended his long day of campaigning by getting back on Air Force One after his rally outside in the freezing cold Nebraska air. More than an hour after Trump left, thousands of his supporters were still stranded by the roadside waiting for a bus to take them back to their cars. When none showed up, some began walking in the sub-freezing temperatures. At least 30 people were treated for exposure and 7 were taken to hospitals. The Trump campaign reportedly blamed the problems on traffic flow and insisted they had arranged enough buses for everyone, except they didn't. And that was far from the only lie told by the White House this week. On Tuesday, again 1 week before the end of voting in the 2020 elections, and with COVID surging everywhere, the Trump administration triumphantly declared victory over the pandemic. Seriously. It was in a news release about a new 62-page report from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy listing what it claims are the scientific and technological accomplishments during Trump's first term. The list includes, quote, ending the COVID-19 pandemic. This comes as we get the news that Congress will not enact a new coronavirus relief bill before the election and potentially not even before the new year. So we know that Donald Trump's campaign is hurting for money, but the Trump organization, well, they're rolling in U.S. taxpayer dollars. The Washington Post reporting Tuesday that Trump's supporters and taxpayers have paid a combined $8.1 million to Trump's own businesses, including his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida, throughout his presidency. Trump has visited his properties around the world more than 280 times while in office, bringing family, foreign leaders, and Secret Service protection with him. During a Mar-a-Lago summit with Shinzo Abe, then Japan's prime minister, Trump's aides stayed in a $2,600 a night house. When Trump met with China's Xi Jinping, the club charged the government $7,700 for their dinner. White House spokesperson Judd Deere said any suggestion that Trump used his office, quote, as a way to profit off of taxpayers is an absolute disgrace and a lie. Come on, man. And from the Enough Already files, Hurricane Zeta is due to hit the Gulf Coast sometime Wednesday afternoon or evening, making it the third hurricane to hit there in just 2 months. Hurricane warnings stretch from Morgan City, Louisiana, to the Mississippi-Alabama line, including Metro New Orleans. Strong winds and heavy rain are expected, and some places may see storm surges of up to 8 feet. So there are a lot of reasons why people are choosing to vote by mail this year, COVID being one of them. But another is physical safety. So I'm shaking my head this morning that a Michigan judge struck down a rule banning the open carry of firearms at polling places on Election Day, siding with gun rights groups. Judge Christopher Murray issued a preliminary injunction against the rule, saying a directive issued by the Michigan Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, did not follow proper procedure. State law already bans open carry at some locations that may serve as polling places, including churches. The new directive also does not address concealed weapons. Unbelievable. But a federal judge on Tuesday denied Donald Trump's request that he be replaced as the defendant in a defamation lawsuit alleging that he raped columnist E. Jean Carroll back in the 90s. The Justice Department had argued that the United States, U.S. taxpayers, should replace Donald Trump as the defendant. The judge ruled that a law protecting federal employees from being sued individually for things they do within the scope of their employment did not apply to the president. But even if it did, Trump's public denials of the rape allegation would have come outside the scope of his employment. And still, has anyone heard from Bill Barr in the past week or two? And finally, congratulations to my friends in Los Angeles, where the Dodgers defeated the Tampa Bay Rays 2-1 in Game 6 of the World Series, taking home the championship for the first time in 32 years. There was an impressive moment in the middle of the game when Major League Baseball acted to remove the Dodgers' third baseman Justin Turner from the field after his COVID-19 test came back positive during the game. But when they won, Turner was allowed to return to the field to celebrate with his teammates despite his positive test. And to make matters worse, he wasn't wearing a mask. The Dodgers president, Andrew Friedman, tried to defend Turner, explaining to reporters, quote, he wanted to come out and take a picture with the trophy.
Come on, man.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Expecting to be a little warmer than yesterday, probably in the mid-70s. Winds will be light and variable, and sunny conditions will prevail throughout the day. Clear skies tonight with lows ostensibly in the low 40s. We'll see. It could be colder. Winds remain light and variable tonight into tomorrow with mainly sunny skies and highs in the upper 70s. Wow. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked to 1,707. Deceased remain at 6 confirmed, and that is, of course, a undercount. Ragweed pollen is rated low in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 25 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate. It ticked up into moderate and is now at 3. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.18 inches. Visibility is 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. That is expected to get much drier as the day wears on. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 56 and partly cloudy. Paris is 57 and cloudy. Kyiv, wait a second. We seem to be missing Rome. Kyiv is 53 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 56 and clear. Hong Kong is 71 with a rain shower. Tokyo is 64 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 62 with rain showers. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and fair. And New York is 53 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Jack Stubbs of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Iranian hackers suspected of emailing threatening messages to U.S. voters last week and spreading false information about compromised election systems ran a disinformation campaign last year that was targeting the Middle East. Facebook said yesterday, Tuesday. U.S. officials blamed Iran last week for thousands of threatening emails and an online video that purported to show hackers breaking into a voter registration system just days before the U.S. presidential election. Tehran has denied the allegations. Facebook said it has suspended one fake account as opposed to hundreds of Russian accounts. Just saying. Which attempted to share the video on its site. That account in turn led to more than 20 other accounts on Facebook and Instagram, revealing a dormant disinformation operation that had targeted countries including Israel and Saudi Arabia in 2019. Nathaniel Gleicher, Facebook's head of cybersecurity policy, said the newly discovered accounts were largely inactive but had previously attempted to spread claims about an alleged massacre at last year's Eurovision Song Contest in Israel. U.S. intelligence agencies are still analyzing who exactly in Iran commanded the operation and its intent. Gleicher said his team found a small number of technical links to a disinformation network suspended in April that was attributed to Iran's state broadcaster, as well as connections to individuals associated with the Iranian government. The importance of this revelation has to be tempered with the fact that our security and intelligence apparatus, meaning ours of the United States, has identified Russia with active accounts spreading voter disinformation.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Alexis Aquagariam of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A judge in a Nigerian court threw out a case against 47 men charged with public displays of affection with members of the same sex, ending what had widely been seen as a test of the country's new laws banning homosexual relationships. The Nigerian law banning gay marriage, punishable by up to 14 years in prison, and same-sex amorous relationships prompted an international outcry when it came into force under former President Goodluck Jonathan back in 2014. The men were arrested in a police raid on a Lagos hotel in the city's Egbeda district in 2018. Police said the men were being initiated into a gay club, but the defendants said they were attending a birthday party. Prosecution and defense lawyers in the case had told Reuters nobody had yet been convicted under the law, which led to the case of the men being widely seen as a test case that could help to establish the burden of proof. Prosecutors failed to attend Tuesday's hearing yesterday at the Federal High Court in Lagos, having previously failed to present some of their witnesses in a case that had been adjourned on several occasions. Justice Rilwan Aikawa struck out the case and said he had done so due to the lack of diligent prosecution. The specific charge the men faced, relating to public displays of affection, carries a 10-year sentence. Now, under Nigerian law, defendants in a case that is struck out can be rearrested and arraigned on the same charges, whereas that is not possible in cases that have been dismissed. And this case has just been merely struck out. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les d'Aster, revoir un latte coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.